The wind carried dust across the barren plains, sweeping against the weathered boards of Elijah Boone's ranch house. He stood on the porch, broad shoulders hunched, hat brim pulled low, eyes fixed on the endless trail stretching toward town. Weeks of waiting, months of imagining, and now the day had come. The letter in his breast pocket had promised him a wife, someone gentle, someone who could soften the hard edges of a life spent in solitude. His hands tightened on the rail. He told himself it was nothing more than a transaction, a necessity for survival, but deep down, loneliness gnawed at him like a hungry wolf. The sound of wagon wheels reached him first, faint and rhythmic, carrying through the dry air. He straightened, heart thudding harder than he liked to admit. Dust rose in the distance, shimmering under the relentless sun. He pictured the woman from the letter, slender, small, a quiet companion who might fill the silence of his days. He imagined her stepping gracefully down, voice soft, eyes grateful to belong somewhere at last. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in his chest. The wagon clattered into town. Elijah guided his horse closer, dismounting with practiced calm, though every movement carried a tension that betrayed him. A cluster of townsfolk had already gathered, eager for a glimpse of the mail-order bride promised to the rancher who rarely spoke, who kept to himself and carried a reputation for solitude as heavy as his colt on his hip. The driver reined the horses, and the wagon creaked to a halt. The door swung open, and laughter spilled out before the woman herself appeared. Elijah's chest tightened, not with recognition, but shock. She was nothing like the letter had described. Towering, broad-shouldered, her presence filled the space before her boots even touched the ground. Auburn hair caught the sunlight, framing a face both strong and smiling. Her skirt swayed as she landed with a solid thud, and her gaze swept the gawking crowd with unshaken confidence. Someone in the back snickered. A drunk muttered loud enough for all to hear, "Lord help Boone, she'll eat him alive." Laughter rippled, and Elijah's jaw hardened. Pride burned in his chest, shame curling alongside it. The woman looked directly at him, voice carrying easily over the murmurs. "Well," she said, bold as brass, "I didn't ride half the country to be gawked at like a sideshow. Which one of you is Elijah Boone?" The words cut through him, leaving no space for denial. He stepped forward. "I am," he said, voice low, steady as always, though the ground felt less certain beneath his boots. Her smile widened, as if she'd already taken his measure and found him wanting, but not hopeless. "Then I reckon you'd better take me to this ranch of yours. Dust's in my throat, and I'd kill for a decent cup of coffee." The crowd chuckled. Elijah fought the urge to turn his back and walk away. Yet something in her eyes, fierce, unyielding, held him fast. Against the knot in his gut, he offered his arm. She didn't take it. Instead, she swung her bag over her shoulder and strode toward his horse as though she owned the trail. The ride back stretched quiet at first, the creak of leather and the distant howl of coyotes filling the space between them. Elijah kept his gaze on the horizon, searching for words he never found. Martha Mayfield, that was the name the driver had called, seemed in no hurry to fill the silence. Instead, she scanned the land with sharp interest, as though she were sizing it up for herself. At last she spoke, tone practical. "I can cook, I can ride, and I can shoot straighter than most men I've met. If you're worried I'll wilt in this sun, don't. I came here because I don't scare easy." Elijah's hands tightened on the reins. "I didn't ask for boasting," he muttered. "You didn't ask for truth either," she shot back, "but here it is." The rest of the ride carried an edge neither would admit. When the ranch house came into sight, grey boards standing solitary against the horizon, Elijah felt the weight of her gaze. To him, the place had always been sanctuary, but in that moment it seemed more like a mirror reflecting every hollow corner of his life. Inside, Martha moved with startling swiftness, setting down her bag, opening shutters, stirring dust where it had settled thick. Elijah frowned. "I like things as they are." "And how's that working for you?" she replied without pause, tugging a chair into place. She lit a fire, gathered what supplies she found, and before long a smell filled the cabin Elijah scarcely remembered, home cooking. He sat stiff at the table while she worked, his pride bruised but his senses betraying him. The aroma of bread and beans struck a hunger deeper than his stomach. She set a plate before him, then sat opposite, watching. "You call that coffee?" she asked, nodding at the tin cup by his hand. Her grin broke into a laugh. "No wonder you needed a wife." He bristled, but the bite of anger dulled under her laughter's warmth. 4 years' silence had been his only company. Now noise filled the room, uninvited, unstoppable, and yet not unwelcome. That night, as the fire burned low, Elijah found himself pacing outside. Shadows stretched long across the land, coyotes calling closer than usual. He stared into the dark, memories rising unbidden. The war, his brother's death in a raid he hadn't prevented, the weight of survival borne alone. He had chosen solitude to keep the pain at bay, yet now a stranger's presence threatened the fragile walls he'd built. Behind him, the door creaked open. Martha stepped out, arms crossed against the chill. "I know that look," she said softly. "I've worn it myself." He turned, surprised by the gentleness in her tone. She went on, steady. "Men laughed at me. Said I was too much woman, too much weight, too much everything. The man I loved left me at the altar. Folks back east didn't want me, so I came where the land's wide enough not to care." Their eyes met. For a moment, silence bound them, not hostile, but heavy with shared scars. Then the night cracked with a sound that pulled both taut. A rifle shot split the air, echoing across the plain. Elijah stiffened, hand flying to his holster. Martha turned, unflinching, her gaze sweeping the dark. Horses moved in the distance, shadows circling, torches flickering faint against the horizon. Elijah's breath caught in his throat. "They've come for my land," he whispered, voice barely audible. Martha's hand closed around the shotgun propped against the doorframe. She pumped it once, firm, her voice calm as steel. "Then they'll find it's not theirs for the taking." Elijah stared at her, this woman twice his size, her stance unshaken, eyes hard with fire. For the first time in years, fear did not come with despair but with the faint, startling glimmer of hope. And the night closed in, heavy with the promise of violence. The first torch arced through the night sky, trailing sparks before it shattered against the barn wall. Flames licked upward, orange against the dark. Horses screamed, rattling in their stalls. Elijah raised his rifle, jaw locked, but Martha was already in motion, shotgun braced to her shoulder. The crack of her first shot rang out, clean and certain, scattering the riders circling too close. "Get inside!" Elijah barked, though his voice faltered against her unflinching stance. "You'll need me," she snapped, eyes fixed on the shadows. The riders answered with gunfire. Bullets shattered the porch post, splinters slicing Elijah's cheek. He fired back, the recoil biting his shoulder. The chaos was deafening, hooves pounding, flames roaring, steel clashing with shouts. Martha reloaded without hesitation, movement swift and sure, her broad frame steady as a fortress. Every shot she loosed carried intent, and every rider that stumbled proved her worth. Yet for all their defiance, the attackers pressed hard. Elijah's barn collapsed in a shower of sparks, heat searing his face as smoke choked the air. He coughed, vision swimming, and stumbled. A muzzle flashed in the dark, a bullet aimed for his heart. But Martha's gun thundered first, dropping the man before Elijah could even lift his rifle. His chest tightened, not from fear, but from the jarring realization that he would already be dead without her. Shame mingled with awe, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. By the time he steadied himself, the riders were pulling back, their leader raising a torch in challenge. His voice cut across the night. "This ain't over, Boone. Tomorrow, you'll bury more than a barn." Then they were gone, dust and hoofbits swallowed by the plains, leaving behind smoke, silence, and the sting of failure. Dawn revealed the ruin. Ash coated the ground, embers smoldered where the barn had stood, and the horses that remained trembled with fear. Elijah knelt among the wreckage, hands curling into fists. The barn had been his brother's pride before the war, and now nothing was left but blackened timber. "This is what comes of letting strangers in," he muttered bitterly. Martha's shadow fell across him. Her voice, though raw, carried fire. "You think this is my doing? That I cursed your land?" He turned on her, anger spilling. "Ever since you stepped off that wagon, it's been nothing but chaos. I should have stayed alone." For a heartbeat she said nothing, and the silence bit harder than her words when they came. "No, Elijah. You should have stopped hiding behind your loneliness. You don't want a wife, you want a ghost to keep you company, someone who won't ask you to live again." Her eyes glistened, but her voice never wavered. "I won't be your ghost." The word struck deeper than any bullet. Elijah's mouth opened, but no sound followed. Martha turned, gathering her things with deliberate force. "The next wagon out, I'll be on it. You can rot here with your regrets." The cabin door slammed, leaving him alone with smoke and silence. By noon, Elijah rode into town, jaw set. He went to the sheriff, demanding men, demanding justice. The sheriff leaned back in his chair, chewing tobacco, eyes weary. "Boone, those riders own the night out there. Nobody'll cross them for your land. You're on your own." The rejection stung, but worse was the hollow echo in his chest. For years he had prided himself on standing alone. Now, when he truly was, he felt the emptiness like a wound. He returned to the ranch with heavy steps. Martha stood outside, bags packed. He stopped short, voice hoarse. "Don't go." She didn't turn. "Why should I stay?" He swallowed hard, the words rough and unpracticed. "Because I need you. Not as a shadow, not as a ghost. As my partner. I can't fight this alone, Martha. I don't want to." Her shoulders stiffened. Slowly she faced him, eyes searching his. For the first time since stepping off that wagon, her guard slipped, and the weight of her loneliness mirrored his own. After a long breath, she nodded once. "Then we fight together." Night fell heavy with dread. They fortified the cabin, set rifles within reach, checked ammunition until their fingers ached. Silence stretched between them, not cold now but charged, threaded with a strange, fragile trust. The first rider appeared like a shadow torn from the dark. Then another. Torches flared, circling closer. Hooves thundered, rattling the earth. Elijah's pulse hammered. Martha's hand brushed his as she loaded her shotgun, steadying him without a word. The assault came swift and brutal. Gunfire erupted, windows shattering, walls splintering. Elijah fired until his rifle burned hot, every shot fueled by rage and something fiercer, determination not to lose what little remained. Martha fought beside him, each blast of her shotgun cutting through the chaos with terrifying precision. Bullets tore the cabin apart, but they stood firm. A rider charged through the smoke, blade flashing. Elijah wrestled him to the ground, their struggle raw and desperate, until Martha's voice cut through. "Down!" He obeyed instinctively, and her shot felled the man inches from his head. The gang leader burst through the haze, torch in hand, eyes gleaming with victory. He raised his revolver, aiming at Elijah. Before the shot rang out, Martha stepped forward, unshaken, and pulled the trigger. The blast threw him back into the dirt, his torch tumbling lifeless beside him. The riders broke, scattering into the night, their courage shattered with their leader's fall. The plains grew still again, smoke drifting upward, stars glinting coldly overhead. Elijah dropped his rifle, chest heaving, sweat and ash streaking his face. Martha lowered her shotgun, shoulders slumping as the tension bled from her frame. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Elijah let out a laugh, rough and disbelieving. "Guess this ranch wasn't too small for the both of us after all." Martha's mouth curved into a weary smile. "Told you I don't scare easy." They collapsed onto the porch steps, the cabin scarred but still standing. In the glow of dying embers, Elijah looked at her, not as the woman who had surprised him, not as the stranger who had unsettled his life, but as the partner who had stood unflinching when the world tried to take everything from him. "I thought I ordered a wife," he said softly. "Turns out what I needed was a partner." Martha leaned back, eyes fixed on the horizon where dawn would soon break. "And maybe," she murmured, "you finally brewed a decent cup of coffee." The night air settled quiet around them, heavy with smoke, but for the first time in years, Elijah Boone did not feel alone.